In the vibrant village of Mbezi, nestled at the foot of the Ngorongoro Highlands, lived a young nurse named Amara. Known for her gentle nature and kind heart, Amara was cherished by everyone in the village. She worked at the Mbezi Health Clinic, a small but crucial place where the villagers went for care and healing. One day, the clinic received a mysterious patient, a frail, old man who had been found unconscious under the shade of a towering baobab tree. He had no identification, and no one in the village recognized him. Amara, with her nurturing spirit, took it upon herself to look after him. The village elders, led by the wise and respected Elder Cato, decided to name him Mzee, which means old man in Swahili. Mzee lay in a deep coma, his breaths shallow but steady. Every day, Amara would sit by his bedside, humming soft lullabies and speaking to him as if he could hear every word. She would clean his wounds, change his dressings, and ensure he was comfortable. The villagers would often see her talking to Mzee, sharing stories of their community, their celebrations, and even their hardships. One hot afternoon, as the sun poured golden light into the clinic, Amara was adjusting Mzee's pillow. Suddenly, she noticed a faint twitch in his fingers. She leaned in closer, holding her breath. Could he be waking up, as if responding to her silent hope? Mzee's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, they opened, revealing eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless years. Amara gasped, stepping back in astonishment. Mzee's gaze locked onto hers, and for a moment, it was as if time stood still. Then, in a voice barely more than a whisper, he spoke. "The baobab knows." Amara's heart pounded. The old man's words were mysterious and left her with more questions than answers. What does the baobab know? She thought to herself. She had often heard the villagers talk about the baobab tree as a symbol of wisdom and longevity, but what could it possibly know? Before she could say anything, Mzee closed his eyes again, slipping back into silence. Amara stood there, stunned and curious. What did Mzee mean? What secrets did the baobab hold? And how was it connected to this enigmatic old man? Over the next few days, the news of Mzee's awakening spread through Mbezi like wildfire. Villagers gathered at the clinic, each bringing their own interpretations and stories. Some believed Mzee sent by the spirits, while others thought he might be a long-lost traveler with tales from distant lands. Amara, though eager to learn more, knew she had to be patient. She continued her care for Mzee, hoping that in time he would wake again and reveal more about his mysterious words. Each evening, she would sit by the baobab tree, looking up at its ancient branches, wondering what secrets it held. The village elders convened a special meeting under the baobab tree, seeking guidance from its symbolic wisdom. Elder Cato, with his deep knowledge of the land and its legends, suggested they perform a traditional ceremony to honor the tree and ask for its guidance. As the village prepared for the ceremony, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of discovering something extraordinary. The whispers of the baobab seemed to echo in her mind, urging her to listen closely, to observe carefully. And so, with bated breath and a heart full of questions, she awaited the day when Mzee would open his eyes again and continue his story. Amara couldn't shake off Mzee's cryptic words. The baobab knows. As the village buzzed with anticipation, the elders gathered to plan the ceremony. The baobab tree, with its gnarled trunk and sprawling branches, stood as a silent witness to their discussions. On the eve of the ceremony, the village was alight with preparation. Lanterns were strung from tree to tree, and the air was filled with the aroma of cooking and the hum of excited chatter. The villagers believed the Baobab held answers, and they were ready to honor it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, the villagers assembled around the Baobab. Elder Cato, draped in traditional robes, stood at the base of the tree. His deep voice resonated through the crowd as he began the ceremony, calling upon the spirits of the ancestors and the wisdom of the Baobab. Amara stood at the front, her eyes fixed on the old tree. She felt a connection to it, a pull that she couldn't explain. As the ceremony reached its climax, Elder Cato sprinkled sacred water around the tree and chanted ancient incantations. The air seemed to thicken with a sense of expectancy. Suddenly, a soft breeze rustled through the baobab's leaves, and a hush fell over the crowd. The tree, which had stood silent for so long, now seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Amara's heart pounded in her chest as she felt a deep sense of calm wash over her. From behind her, she heard a faint voice. Amara. She turned to see Mzee standing at the edge of the gathering, his frail body silhouetted by the firelight. His eyes, though weary, were clear and piercing. The villagers gasped, parting to let him through. Amara rushed to his side, steadying him as he approached the baobab. Mzee reached out, his hand trembling, and placed it against the rough bark of the tree. "The baobab knows," he repeated, his voice stronger now. "It has witnessed generations, seen the rise and fall of many. It holds the memories of our people." Elder Cato stepped forward, his eyes wide with recognition. You are the keeper," he whispered. "The guardian of our village's history." Mzee nodded slowly. "I am, but my time is nearing its end. The baobab has chosen a new keeper." He turned to Amara, his eyes full of kindness and wisdom. "You have cared for me, listened to the whispers. The tree has chosen you." Amara's eyes widened in shock. "Me? But I don't know." "The baobab will guide you," Mzee assured her. "It has already begun. You feel its call, don't you?" Amara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She had always felt a connection to the tree, but she never understood why. Now, it all made sense. She was to become the next keeper, the guardian of her village's stories and wisdom. The villagers watched in awe as Mzee placed a small carved amulet around Amara's neck. It was a symbol of the keeper, a token of her new role. The baobab's leaves rustled again, as if acknowledging its new guardian. With a final smile, Mzee looked up at the baobab. "Thank you, old friend," he murmured, before his eyes closed and he sank into Amara's arms, his last breath leaving him peacefully. The village mourned Mzee's passing, but they celebrated the new keeper with equal fervor. Amara, though overwhelmed, accepted her role with grace and humility. She spent her days learning from Elder Cato and her nights under the baobab, listening to its whispers, feeling its ancient wisdom flow through her. Under her care, the village of Mbezi flourished. The stories and traditions of the people were preserved and passed down, and the baobab stood as a symbol of their unity and strength. Amara knew she had found her true calling, and she vowed to honor the legacy of the keeper. Years passed, and the baobab continued to thrive, its branches sheltering the village and its roots anchoring their history. Amara, now older and wiser, stood under its shade, surrounded by children eager to hear its stories. And so, the whispers of the baobab carried on, a testament to the enduring spirit of Mbezi and the nurse who listened to its call. Amara, once a gentle nurse, now stands as the keeper of these cherished stories, a beacon of hope and knowledge for her people. The legacy of Mzee, the old man who knew the secrets of the Baobab, endures through her, as she nurtures and guides the village into a bright and harmonious future.